Over the past few weeks, we've been taking a look at the role of parents and educators when it comes to fighting anti Black racism. We've delved into systemic racism, we've looked into the history and how the current pandemic is shaping mindsets. And this morning, in our third installment, we're looking at taking steps forward. And guiding us through this conversation is our education strategist, Dwayne Matthews. Hi, Dwayne.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. How are you?
I'm doing great. Let's start by unpacking this idea that hate is not the entire story when it comes to racism. Explain what that means.
So once again, people need to really reflect on this. A lot of times people think that it's hate only and it's a personal pathology, but we just want to remind people that there are four dimensions to this. There's institutional, there's structural, there is interpersonal and internalized. And it's really important that we understand these four dimensions if we're going to try to deal with systemic racism.
You bring up a really good point, and I think it's one worth repeating. You say it's okay not to know all the answers, and that as a society, we are not going to get this right and fix everything by the end of the month. This is going to take time.
And that's really important. One of the challenges that we've had, and it's probably a challenge that starts with school, where we believe that to be intelligent means that we need to have all the answers. And that is specifically not true. So it's really good for us to go through a process to empathize and understand what the situation is, define what it is that we'd like to do, ideate, come up with great ideas, and then test those ideas. And if they're wrong, then we iterate and we go over the whole process again. But to understand that this is a process and it's going to take us a while to get to this.
Something that you and I both like to talk about is the role in education in many issues, including anti-Black racism. What do you want to see at the curriculum level and at what age?
So this is really important. And there are a couple of things that I think that should change. A, we do need to understand the historical context of anti-systemic racism, anti-Black racism, sorry. And we do want to understand how it relates to the transatlantic slave trade and concepts around Black and white. The other thing that we want to see is we want to see representation, mirrors and windows and different perspectives. And so when we look, we realize that it's not necessarily balanced. How do we balance that out so we can see different representation of different people, different cultures, and different ways of being? The other is critical observation. Neil deGrasse Tyson says that a lot of people know enough to be right, but not enough to know that they're wrong. And so critical observation is very important, looking at biases and unconscious biases, and how do we address those and see those in education itself.
When we're talking actual curriculum through, Dwayne, if it is not written in right now, depending on what province that you live in, what role then is it on the educators or on parents individually to seek out that education, that part of the curriculum that's missing right now?
Well, I think one of the important things is usually things happen when there's a demand. And so I think the role of the parent is to ask and to demand of their school, say, how are we going to deal with anti-Black racism? One of the challenges that we have is we have assumptions about how life is. And typically with kids in education, we treat them sort of as tabula rasa, which is wrong. And so we really have to lean in on the education system and make demands and ask. And usually when you have this kind of demand, lots of creativity happens.
When it comes to taking action, this happens on both a big scale and the small scale, a more personal level. Can you walk us through both?
So I think one of the big things on a personal level is people really have to question their own assumptions. Another thing that a lot of people can do is have conversations with their family members. There are lots of ideas and concepts that will come up. And so we have to check those biases as they come up all the time. So some of my friends have asked, Dwayne, what can I do? And I said, have conversations. When those conversations come up, when those comments come up, you need to check those conversations. And then you need to, again, ask your school, what's your school doing? And ask your employers, what are your employers doing about systemic racism? How are they going to address this problem? I saw a quote one time that said that we're all in the same storm, but in different boats. And I think differently. I think COVID-19 has put us all on the same island and burnt all the boats. And so now we have to think about how do we move forward?
Dwayne, it's been great to have your insight and your voice on this over the last 3 weeks. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.